The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. I'm Danny Morrison, 47 years old, and I was about to watch 8 years of my life get deleted by someone who thought COBOL was a type of salad. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd survived Y2K, the dot-com crash, and the 2008 financial meltdown, only to be taken down by a 24-year-old with an MBA and daddy issues. You know what they say about history repeating itself? I'd seen this movie before. Back in '99, I was debugging Y2K code at 2 a.m., while management assured everyone that legacy systems would just figure it out. In 2001, I watched entire companies evaporate because their founders thought marketing buzzwords could replace actual engineering. And in 2008, I saw perfectly good tech teams gutted because some MBA decided they were redundant resources. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't just another engineer getting laid off. This time, I was the guy who built the foundation they were about to demolish. Kelly Sterling stood at the whiteboard, laser pointer trembling in her manicured hand. She'd been VP of Technology Operations for exactly 4 days, longer than some of my code deployments took to run, but not long enough to understand what the hell she was looking at. Her uncle Roy Sterling, our CEO, had given her the keys to the kingdom after she graduated from Wharton with a shiny new degree and zero real-world experience. I remember when Roy first hired me 8 years ago. I was 39, coming off a brutal layoff from a startup that burned through $50 million in 18 months. Roy was different then, scrappy, hungry, willing to listen to someone who'd actually shipped enterprise software. "Danny," he'd said, "I need someone who's been in the trenches, someone who knows the difference between building and bullshitting." Fast forward 8 years, and here we were. Logiflow had grown from 12 employees working out of a converted warehouse to 85 people in a proper downtown Austin office. We'd survived 3 major recessions, 2 platform migrations, and countless disruptive competitors who thought they could out-engineer us with venture capital and attitude. The secret? Core Engine v4. My baby. My masterpiece. 8 years of careful architecture, built to handle the kind of load that would melt other systems like ice cream in Texas heat. "Danny," Kelly said, pointing at my architectural diagram with that laser pointer, "this core engine thing looks like spaghetti. It's bloated. We need to streamline for the tech core acquisition." I adjusted my reading glasses. Yeah, I needed reading glasses now, another reminder that I wasn't the young hotshot anymore, and looked at the screen showing 8 years of my life's work. Core Engine v4 wasn't bloat. It was the reason Logiflow could handle 50,000 concurrent transactions without our servers turning into expensive paperweights. Let me explain something about enterprise software. When you're young, you think speed means cutting corners. You write code fast, deploy fast, move fast, and break things. But when you've been around as long as I have, you understand that speed means building it right the first time. Core Engine v4 was the difference between 80 millisecond response times and 2.5 second disasters that would send customers running to our competitors. "Kelly, that's not bloat," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Old guys like me, we learn to control our temper. It's a survival skill. That's the load balancing architecture. Remove it and our API response time jumps from 80 milliseconds to over 2 seconds. Performance drops 35%. I've been building this for 8 years. She laughed. That confident sound young people make when they think experience is just another word for obsolete. "Danny, you're stuck in the past. This is 2024, not 1999. We don't need these complex legacy systems. TechCore wants lean, modern code. Legacy systems." That's what she called it. You know what legacy systems are? They're systems that actually work. They're systems that have been battle-tested by real users with real data doing real work. They're systems that don't crash when someone clicks the wrong button or inputs unexpected data. I remembered when Kelly was an intern 3 years ago, fresh out of college, asking me to explain basic database relationships. I'd spent hours teaching her, walking her through SQL queries, showing her how to read execution plans. I thought I was investing in the future, mentoring the next generation of engineers. Turns out I was training my own executioner. "Kelly," I warned as she moved toward the development console, "don't touch the repository. That module handles authentication, load balancing, and transaction processing. It's the foundation." But she was already logged into the admin panel. Roy had given her full access despite my warnings. I'd told him explicitly, Roy, giving someone admin access without understanding the code base is like giving a teenager the keys to a Formula One car. They might know how to drive, but they don't understand what happens when you take that turn at 200 miles per hour. Foundation of what? Technical debt? She was hovering over the delete button now, cursor dancing over 8 years of careful engineering. I'm cleaning house, Danny. Time to embrace modern development practices. Modern development practices. I almost laughed. You want to know what modern development practices look like? They look like shipping broken code and calling it agile. They look like prioritizing features over stability and calling it customer-focused. They look like deleting working code and calling it optimization. With a theatrical flourish that belonged in a bad corporate training video, Kelly highlighted the core engine directory and hit delete, then commit, then push. The terminal scrolled green text for a moment, then stopped. Done. See? Leaner already, she said, dusting off her hands like she'd just organized a closet instead of nuking the digital equivalent of a load-bearing wall. The silence that followed was absolute. Jason Brooke, my 28-year-old protege sitting across from me, looked like he'd watched someone torch the Library of Alexandria. Scott Hayes, our 38-year-old DevOps engineer, had gone pale. These guys understood what just happened. They'd been in the trenches with me, debugging midnight crises, optimizing database queries, building something real. In my 20 years of software development, I'd seen a lot of stupid decisions. I'd watched executives delete entire databases because they thought it would free up space. I'd seen companies switch programming languages mid-project because someone read a blog post about the future of development. But this was special. This was performance art levels of corporate incompetence. You just deleted the authentication layer, I said calmly, that strange peace washing over me that comes when you realize you're watching a car crash in slow motion. The application is now a front-end shell. It can't verify users. It can't process transactions. It can't access the database. It's a zombie. Kelly turned to me, chin raised defiantly. In that moment, she reminded me of every know-it-all junior developer I'd ever worked with, the ones who think 6 months of coding bootcamp makes them smarter than engineers with decades of experience. See, this is exactly the problem, Danny. Negativity. You're not adapting to change. You're not a culture fit for the new Logiflow. Culture fit. Another buzzword that really means shut up and do what you're told. I'd heard it before, usually right before good people got fired for asking inconvenient questions like, have you actually tested this? Or, what happens when this breaks? She puffed out her chest like a peacock displaying feathers. You're fired. Security will escort you out. The room gasped. Jason actually stood up, his face flushed with anger. Kelly, you can't just... Sit down, Jason, or you're next. Her voice had that edge that comes when someone realizes they're in over their head but doubles down instead of admitting it. That's when my phone buzzed on the conference table. It had been buzzing for weeks. A persistent caller I'd ignored out of loyalty to Roy, who'd hired me 8 years ago when I was between jobs after the financial crisis. I'd been loyal to the code, to the team, to the company that gave me a second chance when I thought my career might be over at 39. But loyalty is a two-way street, and Roy had just let his niece delete 8 years of my life's work without so much as a, let's think about this for a minute. I looked at the screen. TechCore Industries. The very company about to buy Logiflow for $180 million next week. The company that had been calling me for 3 months, trying to headhunt me away from Logiflow. The company I'd politely declined because I believed in finishing what I started. Kelly was still talking, rambling about fresh perspectives and paradigm shifts and all the other MBA buzzwords that sound impressive in PowerPoint presentations but mean absolutely nothing when your servers are on fire at 3 a.m. She thought she'd crushed me. She thought she'd won. She was waiting for the tears, the begging, the pleas. I need this job desperation that comes when someone's entire identity is tied to their employment. But here's what Kelly didn't understand about guys like me. We've been through enough cycles to know that companies come and go, but good engineering skills are forever. I'd survived the dot-com crash by being useful. I'd survived the 2008 recession by being indispensable. And I was about to survive Kelly Sterling by being smarter than she was. Instead of begging, I answered the phone. "This is Danny," I said, my voice clear enough for everyone in the room to hear. "Danny, It's Lance Rodriguez from TechCore. We haven't heard back about our CTO offer. The voice was smooth, professional, confident. Honestly, looking at Logiflow's architecture docs, you're the only reason we're still interested in this deal. The rest looks like amateur hour. Kelly's smirk faltered. Her head snapped toward me like a bird noticing a predator. Who is that? I held up one finger in the universal wait a minute gesture and continued my conversation. Yes, I said into the phone, locking eyes with Kelly. I accept TechCore's offer. I can start immediately. My schedule just cleared up unexpectedly. Lance paused on the other end. That was fast. Everything okay on your end? Everything is perfect, I said, watching the color drain from Kelly's face as she finally started to understand what was happening. I'll see you in an hour. I hung up, closed my laptop with a satisfying click, and stood up. The sound of my chair rolling back seemed unnaturally loud in the suddenly quiet room. Good luck with the deployment, Kelly, I said, shouldering my laptop bag. The walk from the conference room to the elevator was exactly 47 steps. I know because I counted them, savoring each one. Behind me, I could hear Kelly starting to panic, her voice rising as she barked questions at Jason and Scott about contingency procedures and rollback protocols. What she didn't understand was that there were no contingency procedures. There was no rollback. She'd just deleted the contingency. As I waited for the elevator, I did some quick math in my head. Core Engine handled authentication tokens with a 45-minute cache expiry. Without it, every user session would die when the cache cleared, including Kelly's admin session. The system would lock everyone out, including the person who'd just fired the only guy who could fix it. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside and turned around for one last look at the Logiflow office. Kelly was standing in the conference room doorway now, her phone pressed to her ear, probably calling Roy in a panic. Jason and Scott were hunched over their laptops, frantically trying to understand the scope of the disaster. The doors closed, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: anticipation. Not for revenge exactly, but for the opportunity to build something right from the beginning. To work with people who understood the difference between innovation and destruction. To prove that experience isn't a liability, it's the most valuable asset in the technology business. The drive to TechCore's headquarters in downtown Austin gave me time to think. Traffic was typical for 3 p.m. on a Wednesday, slow enough to reflect, fast enough to feel like progress. I'd built my career on fundamentals that had served me well through every tech bubble and bust. Solid architecture, proper documentation, mentoring the next generation. I'd learned that flashy trends come and go, but good engineering principles are eternal. You know what separates engineers who survive from those who don't? We understand that technology isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about building systems that work when nobody's watching, that scale when they need to, and that don't break when some kid with an MBA decides to optimize them. TechCore's lobby was everything Logiflow wasn't. Professional, established, successful. Real marble in the reception area, not that fake laminate stuff. Art on the walls that somebody actually chose instead of whatever was on sale at Office Depot. The kind of place where serious engineering happened. Lance Rodriguez met me at reception within 5 minutes, no keeping me waiting in the lobby like some vendor. He wasn't wearing a hoodie or talking about disruption. He wore a proper business shirt and looked like someone who'd actually shipped enterprise software to real customers with real money. "Danny," he said, extending his hand with a firm grip, "I didn't expect you to be quite so prompt." "I believe in efficient execution," I replied. "My previous route had a roadblock." He chuckled and led me to his corner office overlooking Town Lake. The view was expensive. You could see the Congress Bridge, the water, the kind of Austin that tech money had built over the past decade. "Let me cut to the chase," Lance said as we sat down. "We've been trying to buy Logiflow for 6 months. Their front end is decent, their sales projections look reasonable, but every time our engineers examine the back-end architecture, we find something remarkable. Professional grade work, enterprise-level thinking." He looked at me intently. "That was you." "Me and my team," I confirmed. "But mostly the architecture I built over 8 years to handle scalability issues the leadership kept ignoring. You can't just throw hardware at bad code and hope it works." "And now you're here," Lance said, telling me your schedule cleared up. "What happened?" I gave him the short version. Kelly Sterling, nepotism hire, deleted Core Engine v4 in production. Fired me for trying to stop her. The whole thing was probably imploding as we spoke. Lance's eyebrows shot up, but he didn't look horrified. He looked calculating, like a poker player who'd just seen his opponent's cards. So if we complete the acquisition tomorrow, we'd be buying what exactly? A front-end interface that generates 404 errors, I said. The data is technically still there in the database, but the engine to access it is gone. And I'm the only one who can rebuild it quickly, because Kelly thought documentation was bloat too. Lance smiled, genuine this time, not the polite corporate smile. Danny, I'm going to be honest. We don't want Logiflow's brand or their logistics app. We want the underlying technology to power our new fintech platform. We need speed, security, reliability, exactly what you've been building. He pulled out a tablet showing technical specifications. This is Project Phoenix, high-frequency trading platform. But since Logiflow's technology is currently imploding, why don't we just build it from scratch with the architect who designed it? I could see the code in my head already. Clean slate, no legacy debt from 8 years of business requirement changes, no quick fixes for sales demos, no compromises with executives who thought scalable meant add more servers, just pure engineering excellence. I want you to head our new architecture division, Lance continued. Equity partner, 3 times your Logiflow salary, team of your choosing. Full autonomy. He paused, then added the magic words, no nepotism hires. While we talked terms, my phone kept buzzing. Text messages from Logiflow. I'd left the group chats active because I needed to know my guys were okay, and honestly, part of me wanted to watch the disaster unfold in real time. Jason. The authentication system is failing, users getting logged out every few minutes. Kelly's screaming that it's a cache issue and we should clear the browser cookies. Scott. AWS bill hit $25,000 in overages. The load balancers are spinning up new instances to handle the failed health checks, but since they're pulling from the broken main branch, they're just creating more failures. It's an infinite crash loop. I showed Lance the messages. Material adverse change? He asked, referring to the clause in acquisition contracts that lets buyers walk away if something major breaks during due diligence. I'd say the technology is significantly degraded, I confirmed. Then we walk and we build Phoenix. Lance extended his hand again. Welcome to TechCore, Danny. When can you start? How about now? The next week at TechCore was like stepping out of a construction zone into a cathedral. No one screamed. No one threw around buzzwords. Code reviews were about the code, not office politics or whose feelings might get hurt. I had an actual office with a door, migrating my mental blueprints into TechCore's secure repositories. We were building Phoenix on a modern Rust-based stack, something I'd requested for years at Logiflow. Too risky, Roy had always said. What if we can't find Rust developers? Here at TechCore, the response was, great choice. When do you want the servers provisioned? Resource requests that took months of meetings and budget justifications at Logiflow were approved with 3-word emails. Request approved. Proceed. It was like working with adults who trusted their technical staff to make technical decisions. Meanwhile, the texts from Logiflow painted a picture of escalating chaos. The demo with TechCore was scheduled for Friday, and Kelly was apparently trying to fake her way through it with hard-coded data and static JSON files. Jason. We're manually processing customer requests now. When someone wants a report, we run SQL queries and email Excel spreadsheets pretending they came from the system. We're a human API. Scott. Kelly hired 3 contractors at $200 hour to reverse engineer the optimization protocols. I tried to explain that would take 6 months minimum. She said they're not thinking outside the box. I forwarded Scott's message to Lance with a note. For the demo tomorrow, ask them to filter the data by date range. Their static files only cover current month transactions. Lance replied with a simple thumbs-up emoji. That night, I worked late on the Phoenix architecture, designing something beautiful and robust and elegant. Something that would handle the kind of load that breaks other systems. Something that would make Kelly's lean code look like the amateur hour it really was. Because in the end, that's what separates the professionals from the pretenders. We build things that last. They build things that look good in PowerPoint presentations. Friday morning arrived with that heavy gray gloom typical of Austin in late fall. I was deep in a coding session with my new Phoenix team when my phone lit up with the group chat Jason had named Lifeboat. The TechCore demo was about to begin at Logiflow, and I had a front row seat to the disaster via text message. TechCore team just arrived. Scott texted at 10:15. 3 suits, 2 lawyers, they look serious. Kelly's sweating through her blazer. She smells like desperation and vanilla body spray. I could picture the conference room. The same one where Kelly had deleted my life's work just a week ago. The same whiteboard where she'd pointed her laser at 8 years of careful engineering and called it bloat. Demo starting, Jason reported. Kelly's driving the presentation. She's clicking through the dashboard saying, "Look how fast it loads." Yeah, it loads fast when you're serving static files from localhost. I took a sip of actually good coffee, another difference between TechCore and Logiflow, and watched the train wreck unfold in real time. TechCore VP just asked to see Q3 logistics throughput from last year, Scott typed. Kelly went white. She's saying historical data is archived for optimal performance reasons. This was the kill shot Lance had prepared based on my tip. There was no archive. There was no historical data access. The whole thing was smoke and mirrors held together with JSON files and prayer. TechCore guy isn't buying it, Jason continued. Please unarchive it. We need to verify database integrity for our due diligence. Kelly's panicking, Scott added. She's trying to inspect Element to change the dates on the webpage. In front of them, she's actually typing JavaScript into the browser console during a $180 million acquisition demo. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I remembered her deleting Core Engine and telling me I was stuck in the past. Error 500, Jason texted. Massive red dialog box on the main screen. Undefined is not a function. Kelly's trying to refresh the page like that's going to fix a fundamental architecture failure. TechCore lawyer just stood up, Scott reported. This application isn't making network requests. We're monitoring your traffic. This is a static website pretending to be enterprise software. And there it was, the moment of truth. 8 years of real engineering versus 1 week of amateur theater, and the professionals could tell the difference immediately. It's over, Jason texted. TechCore team packed up without saying goodbye. Just, we'll be in touch. Roy looks like he's having a cardiac event. Kelly's staring at the wall making this weird humming sound. Lance walked into my office an hour later trying not to smile too obviously. Total fraud, he said simply. Our network monitoring showed 0 back-end traffic. They tried to fake a $180 million enterprise platform with what amounts to a high school student's portfolio project. What happens now? I asked. We've formally withdrawn our letter of intent. Our legal team is documenting everything for potential breach of good faith claims. He sat down looking satisfied. The technology we actually wanted doesn't exist anymore, so we build Phoenix instead, and we do it right. Over the following weeks, the Logiflow collapse accelerated. Investors pulled funding after learning about the demo. The company was hemorrhaging money on emergency contractors trying to reverse engineer my work, a process that would take months even with the original documentation, which Kelly had also deleted as unnecessary overhead. Meanwhile, Project Phoenix was hitting every milestone. We were moving fast but sustainably, the way development works when you have experienced leadership and realistic timelines. No death marches, no hero culture, no we'll fix it in production mentality. Just professional engineering with proper planning and execution. I ran into Jason at a coffee shop in South Austin on a rainy Saturday. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 3 weeks. The kind of stress aging that happens when your entire professional world implodes around you. "Danny," he said, relief flooding his voice when he spotted me. "Thank God. It's a complete nightmare over there. We're manually processing everything now. When clients want logistics reports, we're running SQL queries by hand and emailing Excel files, pretending they came from our system." I slid a TechCore business card across the table. "We're hiring for Phoenix. I need a front-end lead who understands what real engineering looks like." Jason stared at the card like I'd handed him a life preserver on a sinking ship. "Are you serious? After everything that happened?" "Already cleared it with Lance. Same offer goes to Scott and Lisa from QA. Get out, Jason. The ship isn't just sinking, it's already underwater." That evening, I got a Google News alert. Austin startup Logiflow files. Chapter 11 as 180 deal collapses. The article detailed the demo disaster and quoted industry sources describing a toxic culture of nepotism and technical mismanagement. I wasn't mentioned by name, just referred to as a senior architect whose departure precipitated the crisis. 3 months later, Project Phoenix went live. No fanfare, no press releases full of buzzwords, just a switch flip at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I stood in TechCore's operations center with my team, Jason monitoring front-end analytics, Scott watching server performance, Lisa tracking error logs. Real professionals doing real work. Traffic spiking, Jason reported, grinning for the first time in months. We just onboarded Sterling Financial. Logiflow's former biggest client had switched to us immediately after the bankruptcy. Response times? I asked. 65 milliseconds average. Rock solid under full load. I watched the transaction streams flowing across our monitoring display, thousands of financial operations processing smoothly, reliably, professionally. It was everything I'd wanted to build for 8 years, finally running on infrastructure that could support it. 0 errors, Lisa announced. Systems running like a Swiss watch. Lance appeared with a bottle of champagne. The board's ecstatic. Stocks up 8% just on the Phoenix launch announcement. He poured glasses for the team. Funny thing, we got a call from Logiflow's bankruptcy trustee yesterday. They're auctioning off what's left of their assets. How much? I asked. Practically nothing. Turns out enterprise software without working code isn't worth much, but we already have most of their former customers anyway. 6 months later, I got one final contact from the Logiflow saga. The bankruptcy trustee needed help decrypting archived customer data for tax audits, but they were locked out of their own servers. The encryption required dual administrator access, CTO authorization, Kelly, long gone, and lead architect access, ME. I drove to the empty Logiflow office one last time. The building felt like a mausoleum. Desks stacked in corners, cables hanging loose. That particular silence of a place where dreams went to die. I connected to their emergency backup server and unlocked the customer archives, not out of loyalty or forgiveness, but because there were innocent businesses that needed their data. As I finished the decryption process, my phone rang. Roy Sterling. Danny. His voice sounded broken, older. I wanted to thank you for helping with the archives, and to apologize. I realize now what happened. That core engine system. It wasn't bloat, was it? No, Roy, it was the foundation. I let her destroy the foundation. He was crying now. 20 years building this company, and I let my niece destroy it in one afternoon because I thought family loyalty mattered more than professional competence. I could have said a lot of things. I could have been cruel or bitter or righteous. Instead, I just said, "Take care of yourself, Roy." Walking out of that empty building for the last time, I realized something important. This wasn't really a story about revenge. It was a story about the difference between building and breaking, between experience and arrogance, between understanding systems and thinking you can improve them with a delete key. In my 20-year career, I've learned that technology isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about building things that work when nobody's watching, that scale when they need to, and that don't collapse when someone with good intentions and bad judgment starts optimizing them. Kelly thought she was modernizing. What she was actually doing was learning an expensive lesson about the difference between disruption and destruction. Some lessons cost $180 million to learn. The real lesson? When someone starts deleting your life's work without understanding what it does, make sure you know where the exit leads. Because sometimes losing a job isn't a crisis. It's an opportunity to find out what you're really worth. And in the tech business, good engineers who understand how to build things that last, we're always worth more than the people who think they can replace us.